This is the Education Exchange with Paul Peterson. I'm the director of the Harvard Program on Education Policy and Governance. Thank you for joining us. For the first 2 decades of the 21st century, charter schools were growing at a steady pace, reaching about 6% of all school enrollments. But towards the end of the second decade, growth slowed down and opposition to new charters intensified. Many foundations no longer were willing to fund startup costs. Since the COVID pandemic, charter schools have experienced a bit of a revival. Families are now looking for alternatives to traditional public schools, and foundations too have reassessed the value of the charter sector. So just this past month, the City Fund and the Bloomberg Foundation have joined forces to give a combined grant of $20 million towards building a closer relationship between charter schools and historically Black colleges and universities. To discuss this new philanthropic development, I'm pleased to have Marlon Marshall, Chief Executive Officer of the City Fund, with me on the Education Exchange. Thank you, Marlon, for joining our listeners on the Education Exchange.
Paul, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting us talk about the great work happening in charter schools and HBCUs across the country. And it's an honor to speak with you today.
Well, let's begin by asking just what are your goals? What do you seek to achieve through these grants?
I would say let's start from the big picture. As we know, as you know really well, Paul, great schools give kids a fair shot at a good life, but the quality of school is so often, directly tied to a reflection of the income of the local community. And so one of the reasons I love charter schools is it allows the autonomy of the school or the school to be as autonomous as possible to serve the needs of the kids in that school. And so one of our goals is just how do we create a closer relationship in general between the K-12 sector and higher ed. And if you think about the tremendous value that HBCUs have provided in this country throughout their histories, it's incredible. So when you're able to create a very distinct charter school partnership with HBCUs, which combines the K-12 operational experience of charter school leaders with the institutional higher education support and advocacy of HBCUs, and that is backed by local communities. The goal is to get kids in that pipeline where they can be successful, and you can expand the access to rigorous, high-quality learning environments for those local students and really build those strong pipelines. So that's the goal. We're starting in Alabama. We hope to expand from there, but we are feeling really great about building on the work that a lot of these schools have already started, but making it more structured and doing what we can to help them be successful.
I understand you're beginning in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Can you talk about that first initiative? Because that may give our listeners a better sense of what kind of connections you're building.
Yeah, Alabama, we think in particular, is a really big key piece to this puzzle. They've made some really important and impressive strides in student proficiency. For example, last year, Alabama made the largest jump of any state nationwide in fourth grade math on NAEP, which I'm sure your listeners know NAEP, but the National Assessment for Educational Progress. And we saw Black students in Alabama, they're 3 times more likely also to attend a high poverty school compared to their white peers. And so, how do we again see the jump that they've had in the last year that we've seen has been tremendous, and also there's still more work to do in Alabama.
But is Alabama have a strong charter sector? I'm not too sure about that. I haven't followed it in detail, but as I recall, it's a fairly small sector in Alabama.
Well, this is one of the reasons it's a small sector, but it's growing. So we do a lot of work ourselves in Birmingham. They're a growing sector there. And one of the things, given what we've seen in Alabama and the success of other initiatives, we believe Alabama is a strong place to start this work. And so, yes, it is. It is. I would say smaller right now. It's growing, and to the point you made when you started this podcast, families are looking for options. They're looking for what is best for their kid. Is that a traditional public school? Is that a charter school? Is that a magnet school? Every kid's different. They're looking at what's best, and our goal here is to provide more options. And when you provide an option that can create a pipeline, also, to historically Black colleges as an opportunity for them to, again, um, have that pipeline from when they're looking at that 4-year option. If families are, we just think that's going to be really, really strong.
So what
So.
does the pipeline in Tuscaloosa look like? Exactly what's the connection that you've made there?
The connection there, hold on, pulling up the I Dream Big Academy. So it opened in August of 2025, and it opened in partnership with Stillman College. And DC Wolf Charter School is also slated to open in August of 2026, and that's in collaboration with Tuskegee University. So both schools there, they're designed to equip students with that academic rigor, the skills, and the opportunities necessary to succeed in higher education and thrive in the modern workforce. When I've been in this role about 3.5 years now, I've been at City Fund for 5 years. There are other models of that kind of collaboration points in different cities across the country. So if you go to Indianapolis, for example, there's a school there called Purdue Polytechnic. And it was designed when I believe Mitch Daniels was governor of Indiana. And what it did was created a pipeline for students, particularly predominantly of color, who went to this high school, Purdue Polytechnic, and they had a direct pipeline to Purdue University, which allowed Purdue to increase its diversity, but also allow more folks from the community to have a direct pipeline to pursue engineering if they wanted to with Purdue. And so while again this is directly with HBCUs, that's that kind of collaboration where you're directly collaborative with a 4-year university, the opportunities and what you can get when you're in that high school phase can be tremendous.
Well, I've long admired the historically Black colleges and universities. They play such a big role in the civil rights movement. They've made huge contributions over a long period of time. But a lot of people are saying, look, higher education has now opened itself up to the Black community, and many Black students are present on Ivy League campuses, major state universities. Why are you focusing in on this particular sector?
I think it's a great question. Look, let me just start here how I started earlier. In general, in almost every American city, too many low-income students don't have access to a great public school. There are, to your point, many higher institutions doing great work. I historically Black colleges and universities have been doing, like you said, great work for decades. And they bring a legacy of educating and empowering students. They bring deep community trust, and they bring a proven record of success. And so to be able to create a very distinct partnership to folks who have to universities that have been doing that, I think is important. This is by no means saying we shouldn't be thinking about future partnerships. But for right now, knowing the track record that HBCUs bring, that deep community trust, knowing that parents are looking again for options that best meet the needs of their families, we think this is an incredible place to start. We think it's going to allow students from communities all across these in Alabama to start, but again, we hope to expand from there to have access to those 4-year institutions. And if it proves successful, we'll see where we scale out and go from there. But like you said, their track record is tremendous, and a lot of students want to choose to go to a school where they can be themselves. They culturally feel like they fit in. There's a variety of reasons that folks may choose HBCU. So we'll start with this bet and we'll see where we go from here.
Well, there is a lot of data out there that shows that if a Black student has a Black teacher, it can be beneficial. And there's probably a lot of truth to that. And that's maybe part of why the Black college has played such a big role in the past. But now, let me ask you about whether or not college is really the thing to focus on. Some people are now saying maybe there's been too much emphasis that, charter school students must go to college. That's the sign of success. And, we need to think about other pathways out there. There's lots of good blue collar jobs out there where some kind of certification is what you need, not just a 4-year college degree. So What's your response to that kind of argument?
Um, to me, it's both and what I mean by that is this. Of course, if what's best for a young person is going to get a certification, doing some of those things, getting a blue collar job, they should absolutely have the right and the option and the opportunity to go do that. And we should not then say we shouldn't talk about four-year higher ed institutions. The data still shows that if a student goes to a four-year higher ed institution and completes and gets their degree, their likelihood of earning a higher income is greater. You want every student, when they finish their K-12 experience, to have an option to be able to do what's best for them. So that to me doesn't mean you move away from the four-year higher institution. It means you've shown those students all the opportunities that are possible for them to choose. So again, this partnership is focusing in on the HBCUs and the four-year institutions there. But in no ways means that all the schools that are doing great work, particularly in the charter space, shouldn't talk about multiple options. I think there's been this movement to say, okay, we focus too much on college, let's not focus on that anymore. What we should focus on is, are students ready to make the best decision for them? And have we prepared them in the K-12 system to be able to make the choice that is best for them? And that doesn't mean to hide the option of college. That means to provide a pathway so they can do what's best for them.
Well, Marlon, you mentioned the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and there's a new paper out. You may not have seen it by Danny Shaquille and Patrick Wolf and another scholar. They say in this paper that charter schools were steadily improving, according to the NAEP. They were steadily improving throughout the 21st century until COVID hit. But when
Mhm.
COVID hit, they suffered a setback that was really severe, is probably even more severe than in the public schools. So, do you have a sense as to why the charter schools lost so much ground during COVID, and have they made it? Have they turned the corner yet?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, we always like to remind folks that charter schools are public schools. They're free, open, and all. And while they are authorized through their whoever their authorizer is, the state or local school district, they are public schools as well too. So there's obviously traditional public schools, and then there are charter schools. I think a lot, obviously everybody took a hit during COVID, and I think there's a variety of reasons for that. Obviously, kids being out of school, and you could go state by state and look at when kids may have gone back in based on what the local rules were, the rules happening at the state. There's a variety of different components there. I have not seen that paper, so I won't comment on that paper specifically. But I would say, based on the data that we've seen, we definitely saw um, outcomes in the cities that we do work in at City Fund take a dip. We've also seen things already start to rebound. If you look at New Orleans, for example, they just were rated B. I think all their schools or most of their schools were rated B. The system itself is rated B on the statewide assessment test, which I believe was the first time in the history of the New Orleans school system. So you are starting to see in some places some bounce back. You starting to see, I think you said this at the top of the podcast, charter school enrollment start to grow again as families are looking for more options that best fit their needs. And so we have a ways to go. But one of the reasons I think you will see charters start to bounce back, and I already have seen that progress in cities like New Orleans, is one, to be autonomy to do what's best for the kids and families in that community and the school to be able to do that. You've seen states where you have resources, where the charter school resources meet that of your traditional public schools. They have the resources to be able to provide to catch kids up. My partners at Bloomberg Philanthropies do a great job with a program called Summer Learning that they piloted in Indianapolis, and they've expanded to a few other cities that allow families to have options throughout the summer to keep their kids and catch them up. So you're starting to see obviously a lot of catch up from COVID. There's way more work to do, but I think it definitely affected people from all different types of schools. but I do think you're starting to see charters bounce back.
Well, some people have a more critical view of what happened, and that is they say that the charter sector went woke. There's some conservatives out there that say that charter schools used to ask students to work hard, to focus on gaining the skills necessary to go to college, and they needed to learn how to be disciplined in the classroom. They wore uniforms, but this is sort of attenuated, and charters don't have the elan that they once had. Do you think there's any evidence to support that
No,
claim?
I don't. I think I think it's you pull out a school here or there, and I think sometimes people can make generalizations. I was talking to Shavar Jeffries the other day, who runs the KIP Foundation, who has said we should make sure every kid is prepared for college, and whether they choose to go to college or not, again, that's their choice. But we're not. We have to make sure every kid is prepared to do that, and that ties in directly with the conversation we had a second ago on the certification route versus the college route. We need to prepare kids for everything. And every charter network that I speak to, every organization that I'm involved in, as it relates to the charter community, is thinking about how do we make sure that kids and families are getting the best possible experience to prepare them for life after the K-12 system, and they're prepared for everything. So, no, I think that, again, you could find an example or two of anything anywhere, but I don't believe that is an accurate assessment where the charter sector is. And I think every time I speak to folks in the charter sector, we're thinking about how to make sure that uh, they're getting, they are offering kids and families the best overall experience, particularly on the academic side, possible.
Well, that's good to hear. But the other charge against charter schools that you hear frequently is that they're taking kids away from the public schools. We're going to see a decline of about 5% in the enrollment of students in public schools over the next 5 to 10 years. It could be more. Uh, what do you think how do you respond to the charge that really children at public schools are being left behind, and the charter school sector is part of the problem, not part of the solution?
I choice. So at the end of the day, again, I'm going to use, I live in Denver, Colorado, and I use Denver for an example. One, again, charter schools get per pupil dollars, so they are at public school. They have a different governance structure, but they are a public school. Two, in Denver, you are guaranteed a spot to your neighborhood school. And if you choose to not attend that neighborhood school, then you can go into a choice system and rank other schools and ultimately see where you get in. And to me, why should parents and families be bound by their neighborhood to attend just that school? That school, you need a variety of options that can meet the needs of kids and families. You need schools that are doing STEM very well. You need schools that are doing the arts very well. There's a great school in Denver called Denver School of the Arts that my niece goes to, and she's having a wonderful experience there. She has to carpool to get up there, but it's the school that meets her needs. There's a charter school here in Denver called DSST that many kids, particularly kids of color, go to school there, and they're getting a very rich STEM experience. And there's some great traditional public school options also that folks experience. So, what I've been saying lately that I think have been resonating with folks is, are we creating a system that is static, that is constantly just being the same while the world around us is changing? Or are we trying to create a dynamic school system that is always responding? And I would say not even responding to, but being ahead of where things are. So that way we're educating our kids for the world they're going to go into, but not the world as it exists today. And if you say that that's just one type of school, I would argue that is not going to prepare us for what the future of the world looks like.
Well, Marlon, that's a convincing statement, and you put some money on the table to support your vision. But $20 million Well, it sounds like a lot of money to me, but I know that the cost of education is massive out there. It's $1 trillion enterprise. So how do you bring this thing to a larger scale? What kinds of other resources do you think you'll be able to bring to bear on the connection between colleges and universities and the charter school sector? How do you see others joining with you in this enterprise?
Yeah, it's a great question. One, just continue philanthropic fundraising. Again, you have to start somewhere. And so we believe starting in Alabama and these communities with these resources will go a long way. But both from myself and my colleagues at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we're already talking about what could this grow into, both from our own investments, but also from securing additional investments. And then to your point, the education system is trillions of dollars, right? And so when we think about the advocacy component at the state level, once we're able to have some proof points on things that work, you're able to go have conversation with legislators in terms of public investment also into infrastructure like this. So I'm not saying that's what we will do. I'm saying you have a lot of things at the table, and in my opinion, I believe all things can be solved. And so you just got to go out there and prove that things work. And if it works, then everything else will follow. And I'll be sure to be on the front lines advocating for what's best for kids and families.
Well, Marlon, congratulations to you and to the City Fund for launching a program that shows so much promise and offers to link together two institutions that have played a major role in our political history thus far, and let's hope will be equally formative for the next half century, full century. So thanks for joining me on the Education Exchange.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having us. Hope to come back soon and tell you about the progress made here and tell you that we got some additional investments and looking to scale this. So appreciate all you do for the work and look forward to talking about it more.
I've been speaking with Marlon Marshall. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the City Fund. That's a philanthropy committed to the improvement of education throughout the United States. I am Paul Peterson. This is the Education Exchange. Please join me for our new Education Exchange podcast released on the Education Next website every Monday at noon Eastern Time.